And we asked them, who do you go to for advice? And they said, the conservation authorities in Ontario, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Stewardship Councils, and the Ontario Woodlot Association. Oh. Then we said, who do you listen to? Spouse, Conservation Authority, environmental groups, children, friends, neighbors. Look who's at the bottom of the list. I wish I had put dog on the list, because I think people listen to their pets before they listen to the government. But, you know, it was fascinating. But what's the most interesting thing for Ontario is Conservation Authority and environmental groups are seen as very different from government. And they, obviously, in terms of this group at least, they need to keep that sense that they're not a government group. Even if they're funded by the government, they need to be seen as separate from the government, because the government is not valued as a source of information. So we need to be getting the information out to the kids, too. The children are number 4. People are listening to their kids. And we said, what are the barriers? And they said, well, the money that it costs, because for the most part, they're not bringing money in off of their land, so they're just investing money in their land. Time required, and then labor and physical assistance. Now, you remember we did both surveys and focus groups, and what we found as part of this research is that people tend automatically, if you give people a survey and you ask them, what's the major issue, people automatically tick off money. There's something in our society that says that's what you do, is you tick off money right away. But when we actually discussed it with people in the focus groups, what they said to us as the more important barriers were the labor and physical assistance and knowing how to do it. So we think the money thing, yeah, it's always an issue, but if you can deal with the labor and physical assistance and knowing how to do it, we think you can probably overcome the money, because those are the deeper challenges. You think about it, you've got an average age of 57, so these people don't necessarily have the physical capacity to do what needs to be done. They're not strong, physically able farmers and ranchers, and they don't have the equipment, right? They're moving in from the city. They have a lawnmower and they have a pair of pruning shears. So for the most part, they don't have the tools to do it, and then they don't know what to do or how to do it. So the what to do and how to do it is information we provide, but we can also facilitate it by providing teams of teenagers or high school students who can go out there and help them with the physical part of the labor, and by providing some kind of mechanism for them to get the equipment that's needed so they can get it on a loaning basis. So we said, all right, let's talk about enabling. We talked about barriers, so you talk about enabling. There you go. There's the money at the top, but there it is. Labor and physical assistance, tax incentives and relief, on-site personal advice, education and information, support from friends and neighbors, and recognition. We're worrying a lot about recognition these days, and recognition, at least in terms of our results, was quite low to the bottom of the list, because for the most part, non-farm rural landowners aren't doing it for recognition. They're doing it because they think it's important. So the kind of key results that I'd like you to take away from this, even if you've ignored absolutely everything that I've said up till now because it was too boring, is that what these people want to do most is something active with their landscape. So when we say to them, just leave it alone, that's the best thing you can do, that's not rewarding for them. They buy the land in these rural areas because they want to do something. They want to actively be involved with their land. So you have to provide opportunities for them to physically shape their land. That's part of the reason why trees are at the top of all of those lists, because trees are something that they can do. They can plant them, they can prune them, they can clear them. They don't really understand that clearing dead wood isn't always a good thing, but they know that that's something they can do. They can physically be involved. They can, at the end of the day, go home for dinner and say, I did something good for the land today. And so what we need to do as conservation professionals is give them cues and give them strategies for interacting with their land so they have something that they can actively do. The second thing is it needs to be tangible. There needs to be something they can see at the end of the day and they can point to and say, look dear, I did that, I took care of that, I made that difference in terms of our land. And this is the major challenge. That's why in those results, water was sitting at the bottom of the list. Because providing for differences and changes in terms of water quality does not allow them to shape their land or to do something that's tangible, because they don't test their water quality, they don't see the difference in terms of what they've done by looking at water. And so water quality is a major challenge with these people because they don't see themselves as being able to change it, and they don't see it as a priority because it's not something that provides tangible evidence of their efforts. The third thing that's important to them is aesthetics. They go out to rural areas because they like how they look. And so we have to provide advice that frames things up in terms of aesthetics. So you can talk about not mowing areas, and you can talk about not pruning and leaving areas to regenerate, but you want to advise them to do things like provide a mown strip around those natural areas, provide bird boxes, put up a little piece of fencing around their naturalizing area so that there's some kind of visible cue that that space is the natural area and this is a controlled edge, because the aesthetics are really, really important to them. They want that sense of care. And so you can define care by providing that edge and then saying that's natural but this is controlled. And that edge is very, very important to this group. They want to recreate on their land. So if you can hook things into anything that has an opportunity in terms of recreation, especially walking the land, that's going to get you far. Restoration, and I'm talking about restoration in terms of their physical well-being. They want the restorative benefits of their land. So you have to tie it into health benefits. And I think our next speaker is going to talk about that a little bit today. So they really want to know that if they do this for their land, it will make them healthier. Not just the world as a whole, but them specifically. And then always, always, always hook it into trees, because that's what they're motivated by. So the challenge is that non-financial personal priorities get in the way. So their priorities in terms of aesthetics, their priorities in terms of what they want to accomplish with their land, the fact that they want to do stuff, those are all issues. They do want to do it themselves. So if you can provide the tools and the mechanisms to make it happen, they don't expect you to go out there and do it for them. They want specific information to their area. They don't want information on Ontario or on Manitoba. They want information specific to their particular area that speaks to their piece of land. The outside expert is seen as most credible. So unfortunately, they have less patience for having local landowners who know what they're talking about to come to their land. They want to see somebody from outside who can come in and say, this person is the expert. And those environmental groups are about social interaction. So if you can hook them in that way by providing a social network for them with the environmental groups, that can be a tool for you to get the information out to them. You want to match the barriers to the support. So providing tools, providing teams of students to help them do things, rather than providing grant funding. You have to focus your programs on trees and active interventions with the land that provide some kind of physical component that they can do and an accomplishment that they can look at the end of the day. And it's less about motivation than lack of knowledge, tools, and knowing where to start. Somehow you have to get them that information. And there are key differences between non-farm rural and farmers, and you have to keep that in mind. One of the challenges that we face is trying to change how we operate with an assumption that farmers and non-farm rural are in some ways the same, and they really, really are not. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the concurrent session. Thank you very much.